Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Mario here, and I am Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice. You always say that every time whenever you manage to introduce yourselves into any other videos up to this point, Sonic. Sorry, I can't offer for myself, Mario, because of the forms of Sonic movie impressions and stuff like that. So anyway, and welcome back for some more of the forms of the Mexi Toys videos. Now, do you guys even remember back in during the forms of it last Sunday that obviously we've already did manage able to be playing through not only the arcade version but also with the NES version of Donkey Kong in during the forms of it 1981. So, we figured we might be able to continue with that tradition during the forms of this particular weekend. Except this time, as you can tell, the next game we're going to be tackling through is the one and only Donkey Kong Jr. Now, this game did first came out in the arcade machines back in 1982. So, relatively speaking, this game did came out a year after Donkey Kong came out. So, because of that, though, yeah, it's actually quite interesting with all that particular year gap when it comes to forms of trying to release games during that specific time. So, if you couldn't tell already, is about the fact that the entire gameplay of Donkey Kong Jr., it actually plays a little bit slightly similar to the original Donkey Kong, except the biggest difference is this time around is that, as you can tell, Mario, in some cases myself, is the main villain in this game. So basically what happens is that Mario did somehow capture Donkey Kong, and it's up to you to take control of Donkey Kong Jr. to able to rescue Donkey Kong himself. So because of that though, and yeah, this is before when not only Donkey Kong 94, but also with Mario vs. Donkey Kong as well, that basically this allows you that you can able to actually climb onto vines, so that way you can able to continue your progressioning. And every once in a while though, there's a lot of fruit that you can able to actually use, so that way not only does it able to destroy a lot of enemies, but it's also about the fact that it actually gives you some more points if you manage to able to try to deal with the forms of some more enemies in your way. So with that being said, folks, is that similar to the forms of how it does it on, well, Donkey Kong in 1981, that basically though, the version we're going to be tackling through first, now is of course the arcade version, and once again we're going to be playing this on the Switch Arcade Archives version, just because no matter what though, the quality itself looks a lot more vibrant around here. To be more specifically on the arcade version, I just realized. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, a few things I want to talk about this before we get the game started, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 27th of April today, in some cases in 2024 today, and it looks like that today, for those of you who lived in the UK, that Knuckles the series on Paramount Plus has recently came out today in the UK version. So, yeah, that's why I classified that from the start. So, as be expected, it's my turn to start with. So, basically, your objective in Donkey Kong Jr., as I said this before, we need to make our way towards at the very end, except this time, we need to able to make our way towards the key. Because if you do manage to able to obtain a key, then you move on to the next level. So, and also very similar to the forms of how it does it on Donkey Kong, basically there are a grand total of 4 levels you can able to traverse into. So, yeah, for instance, the first stage, as well as the second stage, you're simply able to go from point A to point B, like for instance, while trying to dodge those a lot of crumb traps, and also just trying to keep on climbing those specific vines. And of course, just like in Donkey Kong though, is that if you dare manage to able to do a massive height drop, you die automatically. And also if you fell into the water, you also die as well. And also if you dare touch an enemy, then you also die automatically as well. Although, suffice to say for this point, Sonic, is that out of all the actual arcade Donkey Kong games we've played so far, yeah, what about it? I will say that Donkey Kong Jr. is by far the hardest of the entire trilogy in my opinion. I mean, no matter what though, because you still have to worry about with the forms of stiff mid-air controls, and on top of that, again, if you get hit one time, you're dead. Simply put, about the fact that you're gonna have to able to memorize, not only for the sake of the forms of trying to dodge everything, but it's also about the fact that, well, you just have to able to well, you don't need able to try and make it too slow and stuff like that, because of course, just like in Donkey Kong though, basically though it's about the fact that the actual score counter on the bonus box actually act out as a timer once again. So because of that though, so yeah, as you can see, since I did somehow complete the second stage, not only does it give me an extra life, but also we get ourselves an interesting transition with keep going to Mario's lair. So no matter what though, or Mario's hideout to be more specifically. So yeah, basically here we go on to the third stage, and this is where the game starts to get a little bit more difficult. Mainly because we have to avoid not only sparks, but also with the forms of blue sparks as well. And to make matters even much more difficult, compared to the forms of how it does it in, well, the NES version, is that, simply put, is that those sparks in particular moves extremely fast, so you never know of what's to come. So because of that, yeah, unfortunately though, I died in Journey Forms within Stage 3 so far. Although, let's face it though, it's about the fact it's been about 6 days ago since we've last played several other Donkey Kong arcade games. So, and as far as I can recall correctly, is that we originally did this game back in Journey Forms within some time in 2020, specifically though, for marks the 9th anniversary of the Mexi Toys YouTube channel, and no matter what though, sadly to tell you, that particular playthrough is no longer there anymore, mainly because the views count wasn't exactly all that high, and in addition to that though, it's about the fact that the actual commentary itself feels a bit awkward at times, and not only that though, the amount of discussions we had is basically outdated by today's standards. So, and thus not to mention though, Sonic, it does manage to take place just before the actual pandemic decides to come into play. Yeah, I totally forgot about that particular disastrous thing is about to happen, but either way, let's not talk about that right now, because obviously though, we'll start to be playing some good old-fashioned Donkey Kong arcade games. So, although mind you, we've already done one since in last Sunday, of course, and now we're doing the second one, which is Donkey Kong Jr. for the likes of today is Saturday. So, now as far as tomorrow is concerned, we're going to be tackling through the final Donkey Kong arcade game, which appears to be Donkey Kong 3, but we'll discuss on that until tomorrow, because no matter what though, the entire gameplay for Donkey Kong 3 plays a lot differently compared to not only for Donkey Kong, but also with Donkey Kong Jr. as well. So, relatively speaking of, yeah, then again, we'll discuss on that later. So, oh, you kidding me? I was so close to able to make my way towards the end. Well, there goes my run, I guess. And in fact, no matter what though, I somehow ended up in first place. So, at least for now anyway, because I already know for a fact that I can easily tell that Sonic will definitely beat me no problem during the forms of his turn. So, yeah, best of luck for you, Sonic, I guess. So, yeah, that's already been registered into our leaderboards. So now it's your turn, Sonic, to able to actually tackle through Donkey Kong Jr. on the arcade version. So, again, best of luck, I suppose, because obviously, though, this particular version is, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's actually a lot difficult than it looks. Now, there was like 2 of me, when we start the game off, from that particular cinematic intro sequence. So, a little bit odd around here, whilst unlike the NES version, that basically, though, much like Donkey Kong on the NES, that basically, though, there was no intro sequence. So, because of that, though, and of course, similar to the forms of how it does it on Donkey Kong, though, that basically, though, is about the fact that, like we've already established that before, that we're tackling for the arcade version first, and then after that, we'll show off the NES version, so we can definitely tell the forms of some comparisons. Now, unlike the forms of how it does it on Donkey Kong on the NES, that basically though, you can only experience 3 levels, which as a result we'll explain more details about that if we get on to the forms of the NES version of Donkey Kong Jr. Anyway, so as far as we did somehow manage to able to watch Knuckles the series just recently on Paramount Plus, like we've already established that earlier, well, I will admit though right away, I really do enjoy it so far. Well, mind you, we're not going to able to mention any spoilers from now on, just because it's the most recent series, so no matter what though, we're not going to spoil the forms of too much elements into it. So I'll let you guys find out for yourself. In fact, let us know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Have you guys do manage to enjoy watching Knuckles the series so far? Because I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. So relatively speaking, that's all I can really say about that, I guess. So either way, yay, I somehow managed to complete Stage 2 without any sort of issues. Well, enjoying the forms within Stage 2, as you can tell, that basically, though, we have to be able to utilize with that particular spring, and basically, though, if you try to tap the jump button at the right time, basically, though, you can able to actually skip a good chunk of the level, which is a bit tricky in the arcade version, whilst compared to the NES version, that for some odd reason, I'm pretty much more accustomed to that, which then again, we'll get onto the NES version after we're done with the forms of the arcade version, because I can definitely tell that Mario sadly does not make it into the final stage. So because of that though, yeah, I will try my best if I was able to try to complete Stage 3, whilst unlike Mario though, that he did somehow get screwed over for about approximately 4 times in a row, which that's mainly because of this part right here is always the trickiest, because not only that, that spark is moving ridiculously fast at the end, specifically with the red spark we're able to avoid. So, alright, it's gonna be my moment, and there we go. I somehow proceed into the final stage. So, now as far as the final stages, as far as I'm concerned, that basically though is about the fact that, as you can see, we do need to able to release Donkey Kong out of the cage. And in order to do that, well, we need to bring all these keys right onto the actual padlocks. So because of that, usually for the arcade version, you have to insert for about 6 of those keys. So relatively speaking, we definitely need to avoid not only those pesky birds, but also with the forms of cramp traps as well. And unfortunately though, I took a death. So, well, I'm not going to give up that easily, though, because obviously, though, I was doing quite well, all things considered. Although I will say, though, in joining forms of our practice run, my god, it actually took us quite a lot of tries, especially noticeable because, still, I will admit it, though, right away, that Donkey Kong Jr. is by far the hardest games of the entire trilogy, in my opinion. I mean, it is fun and exhilarating at the same time, but my goodness, if you really want to able to see what happens if you do manage to rescue Donkey Kong, well, good luck with that, because obviously you're about to die a lot in joining forms of this game, so yeah, that's what I was expecting for this point, Sonic. And in fact, you're doing quite well recently. Yeah, I know that. Just like the forms of how it does it on the arcade version. Ah, come on! That stupid bird just somehow popped out of nowhere. Ah, jeez Louise. Anyways though, there's also some things I would like to able to mention about this as well, is that we've only just got about exactly 4 days to go now, until we are approaching onto, May. Oh yeah, because kind of thinking about it, also I just found out something for this point, Mario, is that recently we've actually got ourselves a brand new trailer from the likes of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, which, I'm afraid to tell you, I don't think we can able to actually discuss on that right about now, but I'm sure enough that Piglet will definitely mention more about it if he goes back onto Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing for the mission mode. So because of that though, yeah, we'll, God's able to let him mention more about it if he goes back onto it at the very least. So, alright. This might take a bit while, especially noticeable I have to able to avoid not only birds but also with these cramp traps, as I've already explained this earlier. So, okay, so close. Okay, come on. Come on! There we go! We've rescued Donkey Kong! Or should I say, I rescued Donkey Kong, whilst compared to you, Mario, that you didn't make it this far. Oh, ouch. What a kick from Donkey Kong, while Mario just tried to run away. And just like the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong though, basically though, we're going back into a loop. So basically we're going back into stage 1. So relatively speaking though, I am the number 1 once again. So, at least to be more specifically on the arcade version. So, here's what I don't get though, Sonic. How come you are always good at the arcade version, whilst compared to me, I'm not very great at the arcade version? Well, I don't know about you, because I'm pretty much more accustomed to able to like, I don't know, memorize the specific jumps, or perhaps even maybe I was a little bit pleased about with the forms of how vibrant certain colors are, or perhaps maybe because I was, you know, quite good when it comes to experiencing certain games, except there might be a couple of times where I somehow got a game over. So, oh well, no big deal. But what really matters to me, though, is that I've somehow completed the first run. So, I would have liked able to tackle for the second run, but unfortunately, though, that's not the case. So, anyway, so that pretty much does it for the arcade version of Donkey Kong Jr. And, yeah, that was quite of a interesting experience right there. Yeah, exactly. So now let's go ahead and move on to the NES version. So once again, we'll use the NES Classic Mini. So we'll meet you guys there onto the NES version. So we'll be right back. Alright, here we are onto the NES version of Donkey Kong Jr., where basically the entire game itself, it plays very similar to the forms of how it does it on the arcade version, except the fact that the actual color tone is actually a lot different. So no matter what though, you're still able to actually grab onto specific vines, and if you touch certain fruit, then obviously though you can able to actually defeat all these enemies in the process. So yeah, nothing different from there. However, here's the thing though, is that do you guys even remember about a few seconds ago, or should I say a few minutes ago actually, that unlike the forms of how it does it on the NES version of Donkey Kong, that you can only experience 3 levels on the NES version, whilst unlike the arcade version, you can able to experience all 4 levels. Whilst in here though, not only we can able to experience the exact same stages as the forms of how it does it on the arcade version, but it's also worth noting for there wasn't any singular level that's been cut on the NES version. So yeah, at the very least, that's actually a cool thing to worth noting for, especially concerning for the fact that obviously about the fact that we are, well, it's a bit tricky to explain because we already know for a fact it's been you know, quite a few days ago since we've last did our commentary recording sessions and all that. So anyways, with that being said though, I think we should probably get this game started, right? Or specifically, the NES version. So yeah, basically though, Mario's gonna have his turn first, and he's probably gonna go on to game A, and as always, I'm about to go on to game B. So yeah, wish us luck I guess. And somehow, Mario's off to a great start, especially noticeable he died right onto that first cramp trap. Or my guess is though, Sonic, is that obviously I somehow almost got distracted by with our laptop's battery life. So, but still, no matter what though, we got able to cope with it, unfortunately. So, yeah, technically speaking of Mario, there was also the yet another Donkey Kong Jr. game, except that involves around math. And relatively speaking though, that game sucks with Donkey Kong Jr. math. And relatively speaking though, it's a good thing we did not get it on the Wii Virtual Console re-release version back on the Wii. But that's just mainly because it is such a bizarre game. And relatively speaking though, Sonic, is about the fact that it just, well, as you said earlier, that game blows. So, yeah, anyway, and just like the forms of how it does it on Donkey Kong game on 1981, Donkey Kong Jr. also received some multiple versions of the game, ranging from the arcade version, as we've already experienced earlier, and there was also Atari 8-bit version, and as well as that, there was also Atari 2600 version, as well as Atari 7800, BBC Micro, as well as Clue Adam, and even ColecoVision, and as well as that, there's also Famicom Disk System version, and as well as that, there's also the NES version, as what the version we are currently playing on, as well as Intellivision, and finally e-reader, as well as some any other like re-releases during that specific time, ranging from Virtual Console lineup for the Wii, Wii U, 3DS, and you name the rest, and finally, most notably, the Switch Arcade Archives version, including the honorable mention with the forms of the actual Nintendo Switch online subscription services, specifically the NES. So, yeah, that's quite a lot of versions, just like the forms of how it does it in the original Donkey Kong game. So, there we go. I somehow made my way to the final stage in the NES version in Donkey Kong Jr. So, yeah, you still need to be able to insert about 6 keys, so yeah, similar to the forms of how it does it on the arcade version, basically. So, at least on the upside is though, Sonic, is that we somehow managed able to experience every single levels in journey forms of not only the arcade version, but also on the NES version as well. So yeah, that seems pretty cool and all that stuff, especially noticeable that, again, unlike the NES version of Donkey Kong in 1981, that's basically though that 50M was not there on the NES version. So, And yay, I've somehow completed my first run in the NES version of Donkey Kong Jr. So, awesome stuff, and relatively speaking though, just like always, I sent all the way back to the first stage. So, to be expected for the most part. So, but yeah, that's as far as we can able to actually talk about in terms of the forms of how Donkey Kong Jr. actually plays out to be. In fact, kind of think about it, no wonder why that Donkey Kong Jr. is the most forgotten character every nowadays. Well, aside from the fact that he did somehow make his appearance, not only for the sake of the forms of, well, let's just say, he did appear in Donkey Kong 94 for the Game Boy, and he actually partners up with Donkey Kong to able to stop Mario from rescuing Pauline, which you probably already know about that. And he's also appeared in Mario's Tennis on this abysmal Nintendo Virtual Boy, or should I say the miserable failure Nintendo Virtual Boy for Mario's Tennis, because obviously though that the actual system did not sell very well, and as far as I'm aware, it only came out in Japan as well as North America. Well, it's luckily in the UK version that basically we were never able to receive the Nintendo Virtual Boy, because obviously that's a good thing, because it will actually cause a lot of headaches if you played that particular system for too long. And not only that though, for I've searched on eBay, not only for the system itself, but also with box complete as well, my god, it's actually extremely expensive these days. Which, gee, no wonder why though, Sonic, that particular system flopped. Which, as a result, that also applies for the Wii U as well. Although, unlike the Wii U though, Mario though, is that obviously though, the Wii U does manage able to contain some fantastic library of games. Like, some of them are actually very popular, like Splatoon, Mario Kart 8, Super Mario 3D World, and you probably name the rest. Although it's kind of unfortunate though that we can no longer able to actually play online, enjoying the forms within not only the original version of Mario Kart 8, but also with the forms of Splatoon as well. And let's not forget ourselves with Super Mario Maker 1, just because it's so unfortunate that we can no longer try to able to actually play through all of those event courses, which as a result, we were originally trying to able to actually do that particular mini Let's Play series of Super Mario Maker 1, just before the actual service is shutting down completely, not just by the forms of create your own levels, but also with experiencing online levels around the world. But unfortunately though, due to time constraints, we are basically too late. So because of that though, yeah, it kinda sucks honestly. Although luckily though, we can still able to actually experience Super Mario Maker 2 after all, just because obviously though, everyone else out there still managed to play Super Mario Maker 2 even to this day, despite the fact that it actually missing certain charm compared to the forms of how it does on the first game, like the lack of amiibo costumes and all that stuff, and that's as far as I can try to able to describe about it. So, either way though, here's me, take another death right here, and as a result, I'm now ended up in the final level again, and let's just see if I can able to actually just to, well, complete this, I guess. So, but still, you need to able to watch out for those birds after all, just because they're trying to able to outright against you, so. What is also worth noting for this point right there is that if you think you're about to able to insert quite a few keys onto your progression in journey forms at this stage in particular, well, chances are though you got able to actually just try to start all over again with this entire stage, so. Alright, come on. Alright, just one more key, and I should able to complete my second run. So, there I go. Nicely done for my part. Even though it's a shame that we can't see Donkey Kong just somehow kicks Mario in this particular version, whilst unlike the arcade version, you can able to actually see Donkey Kong's foot did somehow show up. So, and there goes my run. So, oh well, I did somehow manage to at least complete 2 runs in journey forms within the NES version of Donkey Kong Jr. So, but then again though, Mario, you actually did pretty well on the NES version. Yeah, exactly. So speaking of such, it's now Sonic's turn now on the NES version run on Donkey Kong Jr. And would you look at that, he died on the exact same place as I did during the forms of that particular Crumb Trap during the forms of the first stage on this version. So, yeah, that was clearly unintentional, but regardless of such though. Okay, let's get back into the forms of another set of appearance for the likes of Donkey Kong Jr. as a character himself. Obviously though, he also appears in Mario Tennis for the Nintendo 64 as an unlockable character. And in addition to that, he also appears in Journey forms within Super Mario Kart. And also, speaking of Mario Kart though, that Donkey Kong Jr. also becomes playable during the forms of Mario Kart Tour, despite the fact that he was actually sprite-based, as opposed to, like, the actual 3D model. Well, aside from all that stuff though, yeah, we have not seen Donkey Kong Jr. since Mario Kart Tour, despite the fact that it was actually sprite, as opposed to, you know, a 3D model. So, yeah, it seems kind of weird though, whenever you try to look on different perspective angles, when it comes to the forms of Donkey Kong Jr. on the Mario Kart Tour game. Well, that's besides the point. So, alright, so at least I did somehow complete the first stage, after all, on this version right here. And, yeah, that's as far as we can able to talk about the forms of today's, discussion at this point, guys. I mean, sure enough, though, it's about the fact that recently that, Tiana, she's now obviously continuing, experiencing Princess Peach Showtime, and recently so far, that she did somehow complete the 3rd floor, so she's now moved on to floor 4, so... Which, kind of think about it, she's now onto the halfway point already for Princess Peach Showtime, just before the amount of extra content that she's about to jump right into. But let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right now, because obviously though, it's probably best if we let Tiana will mention more about other aspects in Princess Peach Showtime, so either way. And there goes my run, so yeah, my performance on the NES version is pretty rough. So with that being said, folks, this is me, Sonic the Hedgehog here, and Mario here. So join us next time for tomorrow that we're about to tackle through the final Donkey Kong arcade game of this whole entire trilogy, and that's what appears to be Donkey Kong 3. So Donkey Kong 3 is going to be interesting to say the least, so we'll stay tuned for that. So we'll see you guys until tomorrow.